Hey everybody, welcome to Robert Review Stuff, where today I'm going to be reviewing Puppet Master.
Okay, give me a break. I don't have any actual puppets, okay? Because I'm an adult.
That's me!
October is here again, and no amount of scariness in the real world is going to stop me from talking about scariness in the fake world, which means it's time for a horror-thon. Today's movie is one I've known about for a long time, but I never felt the need to watch it. But it was requested by my coworker Ryan, so I'm doing it. And that movie is called Puppet Master. So there's an old guy that makes dolls that come to life. I don't know why. I don't know, ancient Chinese secret or something. Moving on. Does anyone else even remember that commercial? I'm old. Shortly after we meet him, two men in black guys show up and he kills himself before they can take him. I also don't know why this happened. Moving on. Years later, a group of psychics that call themselves magicians show up to investigate, only to find that the dolls are on the loose and killing people. What, did you think it was going to start making sense at some point? Okay, so I often find it hard to judge these classic movies. I mean, it's not 1989 anymore. There's no way this movie would pass today's muster, but what if I had seen it then, when I was 6 and stupid? I don't know. I'm not a magician. I'm not a psychic. I can only assume that the word psychic hadn't been invented in 1989 because all these people had clearly psychic powers but only referred to themselves as magicians for some reason. And there's another curious word they seem to not know existed. The word rape. One of these psychics has a vision of this Gallagher guy. No, not that one. Yeah, that guy. Has a vision of him forcing a woman to have sex. Yeah, there's a word for that. And it's also an interesting sign of the times that the group that was there to witness the vision all collectively decide not to tell Gallagher's wife about it, so as not to make the rapist look bad after his death. And true to their word, the rape never comes up again, which kind of makes me wonder why it had to happen in the first place, as it had no effect on the story. But really, I can only assume it's because whoever wrote this was a strange, strange person. Many of the decisions in this movie just seemed odd and unnecessary. Like, you have to allow for the general oddness that this is a horror movie about murder puppets. Fine, I'll let that one slide. But why are all the people psychics? Especially since apparently no one knows what that is. Would it not have been equally as effective if it was just a bunch of random people in a hotel getting murdered by puppets? Is it just so you can have people have access to information that you didn't want to bother explaining how they got? They just instantly know, because magic. And why is that lady always carrying around that dead dog? Is it just so you can get all your exposition out by having her talk to it constantly? Okay, so ignoring the plot and just judging this as a horror movie, I also found it pretty strange. It has a pretty low body count for a horror movie just because only a few magicians showed up. I'm sure Copperfield was there, but he probably bamfed out of the place as soon as the killing started. Probably took the Statue of Liberty with him too. And the few deaths that this movie has are pretty oddly paced. The old guy kills himself in the beginning, and then it's super quiet for a really long time. And then when the killing gets going, it goes hard. It knocks out most of the main cast in the span of 10 minutes. Now sure, that only meant 3 people, but there were only 6 or 7 people involved, and one of them was already dead, and 2 of them survived. So the first victim dies having sex with the second victim. Or at least I think that's what they were supposed to be doing, because there was clearly a blanket in between them. And that would chafe. Then immediately after she gets killed, he gets leeched to death, which is really weird. It's weird enough that this old guy is making puppets with tiny heads and man-sized arms and one with hooks and spikes and knives, but the sexy lady doll that throws up leeches? Are you okay, bro? You want to talk about it? So there aren't very many kills in this movie, and the ones that it does have aren't terribly good or creative, but it does have something that other horror movies I watched recently don't have, and that's boobs. I say it all the time, if you're going to make a strange and not terribly good movie, the least you can do is show some boobs. So it gets a couple points for that. The cast of this movie was strange, but I get it. The entire cast was old and or nerdy white guys and generally attractive ladies. I'm sure back then they weren't terribly worried about their female audience, if such an audience even existed for horror movies back then. It does bring me back to a previous question though as to why this couldn't have just been a random group of college students. That way everyone could probably have some eye candy. I don't know, it just be that way sometimes. I can't be bothered to look into it, but it's my assumption that the writer is probably a nerdy white guy and wants to be surrounded by attractive women. Most writers are like that in my experience. Anyway, this would also be supported by the fact that this lady is straight up fiending for it from this nerdy scientist guy, and he could not seem less interested. I figured he would turn out to be gay, but then they actually do have sex, so I guess not. But then when he does have sex with her, he describes it as an experiment, because they're doing it to get a psychic vision of other people that have been in the bed or something. I'm sure she's just thrilled to be with him. He seems like a gem. But maybe he's just not that into her because he's a scientist and she's not terribly bright. Like, she ties him up to have sex with him with a blanket in between him because Jesus, and then she thinks someone's in the room with them and hears something and goes to investigate without untying the guy. Look, girl power and all that, and you don't need no man to live your life, but two is still better than one. Well, for her mistake, she takes a drill to the eye. I mean, this girl may have had precognition, but she didn't have much regular cognition. Basketball, right? But on the other hand, this guy probably isn't as smart as he believes he is because he can't tell the difference between a full-size woman kissing his chest and a tiny puppet kissing his chest. She's like 1/100th scale, dude. And then he can't tell the difference between her kissing him and a leech. In his defense, maybe this lady just has really tiny spiky lips. I don't know. And as for the rest of the cast, well, they made no impression and inspired no jokes, so who cares? So, those are my thoughts on Puppet Master. I guess I was expecting more because I've heard about this movie for so long, but it was mostly silly and odd with an unimpressive body count for a horror movie. But it did have boobs, so I'll bump it up to meh. And speaking of expecting more, you guys probably expect me to post more videos, and maybe I should, and maybe I will. So to inspire me to do so, please like, comment, and subscribe, and follow me on my Facebook fan page. But that's all for this week. I have been Robert, and Puppet Master has just been reviewed. But since I found the original movie was streaming on Hulu, I decided that I should go and watch that for a proper comparison, and I decided I liked the reboot better. You can leave your angry comments below. Your opinion is different than mine and that makes you stupid. That's what you sound like right now, so calm down and let me finish. Without the rose-colored glasses of nostalgia, the original really didn't do much for me.